For those serious about becoming successful, consistently profitable options traders, now is the time to build skills in technical analysis, market analysis, and applied volatility to get those results. We have multiple memberships, starting with our Go membership that teaches rules-based trading and our Pro membership that teaches more subjective trading. For more information, go to LockeInYourSuccess.com/memberships.
All right, let's bring on Stephen.
Hey, John.
Stephen. Hey, Stephen. For those of you who don't know, Stephen is our head options coach and mentor. He's been with us for, I don't even know how long, for quite a while now. And
yeah.
I really appreciate all the things that you do for us and all the stuff you do for our students. It's been just great having you here. So,
well,
and with
thank
that,
you. Feelings are
we talk.
mutual. Yeah. Long time no see. We had a fun session yesterday. If anybody was in the pro meeting, we appreciate you being there. If you haven't watched it yet, we recommend it. And if you are looking to be a pro member, make that jump, sign up, and start checking those out. John and I have a lot of fun, and I think that we provide a lot of good content, if I don't mind saying so myself. The first question in the list that I wanted to address was, what would you consider your biggest win this year? And I like the way you kind of worded it. You know me, I got my way I deconstruct how things are worded and questioned. Is John didn't say, he's not saying what was your biggest dollar win, because that's where the mind wants to gravitate towards too, right? Is, you can have your biggest dollar win and it was a freaking error. You could have bought a call where you were trying to sell a call on a big down day and didn't even know it was your account. 3 days later, the market's up 100 points and you're like, oh my gosh, I made $5,000 on a call. So that is like a great example, a bit hypothetical, of really what my biggest win was this year was process. And if you go back and look at these holiday parties, I don't know how many I've been on. It's probably the 5th or 6th. I'm sure I've mentioned process, but I would say this year, process over outcomes, right, is what I'm driving at. Mm-hmm. It really, really, really tightened up my process around trading. And there are many processes. The one I'm really talking about is having a defined process for setting aside time where I'm going to read the market, make my assessment and my analysis, where I see opportunities, trade selection, what strategy I'm going to match up with my market read, and how I'm going to manage the trade. And then for me, most importantly, and this has always been important, but I think this year, this particular component of my process I've gotten the most out of is debriefing. I have learned so much more this year from debriefing. And as most people know, it used to be the losers for me. You learn the most because those are kind of the ones that grind on you. Although you should be able to learn something from all your trades, I just didn't have as many losers. So that's probably a good thing. But I had a lot of winners that should have been twice as big. I mean, really a lot of those. And I take away from it, that's great progress that I'm winning, but I should be winning more versus I'm still not, I'm losing and not making money. That's, I'm looking at it that way, but man, it can be somewhat painful when you look at a trade and you're like, wow, had I done this very simple thing or not done this other thing, it's usually over trading, and I'll touch on that later, I would have made 2x, 3x more. And again, I'll kind of speak to that,
and that makes a big difference, right? I mean, because
big.
We're all going to have losses, but if you're making 2 or 3x more, the loss is no longer an issue.
I mean, you make $6,000 and you should have made 18. And I'm talking about, 1 or 2 days worth of adjustments is the difference. I'm not talking about, this complex path I should have gone down. No, it was the same thing, just got a little overzealous with adjusting or whatever the case may be. So I'm Kaizen is the Japanese term for constant improvement. There's always Kaizen for me around all of my trading, but particularly in my process. So, I'm going to continue to try to refine my process. And sometimes you don't know what form that will take, but you just have to be vigilant about it. And, we try to teach ways to improve our process, but it becomes a refinement after a while once you get the general framework. So that, what I say, is my biggest win this year. is really improving my process, and more specifically around it, developing what I call a tactics catalog with the impact, pros, and cons. And what I mean is just simple adjustment tactics for particular trades, for particular trade structures, and what the trade-offs are for each one of those. And, I used to kind of carry those in my head and found through my debriefings that I needed to have that written down better and printed out on my desk so that when it's trade adjustment time, or I know I'm going to adjust at some point in the day, that I'm looking at my choices. And I think of it as a menu, and I'm very visual. And I'm very list oriented. So I'm understanding that about myself. I'm a to-do list person. John knows, how I'm about organization, but I'm very list oriented. So I like to see the list of potential adjustments that would make sense in this particular instance, and then weigh those off of each other rather than what just kind of pops into my head at that moment. Because it could be a stressful day. There could be something going on outside of trading, and just the first thing that comes into your head is what you latch onto, and you do that adjustment. And then later on in the campaign, you realize, wow, that really wasn't the best thing I should have done. I easily could have done something else. So having that in front of me,
and we find that even debriefing on the pro trades, right? So I was debriefing on yesterday. I'm like, yeah, I shouldn't have done that, right? It's like, I won, but I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, you make a good point. One thing that is interesting about this process improvement is sometimes I'll catch myself not making an optimal move like the next day or so, but I don't go into revenge trading and try to make up for it in some fashion. But what I will allow myself to do is be creatively responsible. Let's see if I can get back to the position that I should have been in, but in a responsible manner. Sometimes I can't, and I just chalk that up to we'll get it next time, and make sure I catch it in the debrief. But I have found that it kind of forces me to flex that flexibility muscle. Let me give you a quick example. I thought about this yesterday because that was kind of the theme of yesterday's session is, we do Super Bowls a lot of the times, or verticals that are 10 wide. Well, you can do one that's 20 wide or 30 wide and adjust your contract size, and it's the exact same risk profile, but it gives me more trade management flexibility down the road if I want to tighten that up rather than taking verticals off. If I got verticals on, not to get in the weeds on this, but if I got verticals on and it's getting challenged and they're 10 wide, and I don't like to use the 5 wide strike, then I will probably just start removing some of them as a risk management technique, for example. But if I'm a little wider, maybe I want to, and it's all contextual. Maybe I'd rather take a 30 wide and shrink it to a 20 wide and use that. And that way I'm holding on to more, whatever the case may be. So just things like that around the process. And the other biggest wins that I just will mention is really expanding my toolkit as far as all the trades and using them together. I talked about that in an example yesterday of kind of using a super bull and a Hammett trade together, and kind of expanding the toolkit in that fashion, kind of trading structures kind of as a composite, kind of together off each other, so to speak. And then the third area that I'd say is the biggest win is just really improving my technical analysis and chart reading, which should be a constant process for everybody, right? You should be better each year than you were the prior year, but I definitely could see jumps in that for me, which, like I said, I'm always a student of the game, but
I think the market outlook really helps with that too. Just going through and analyzing what happened and what's, what it means and what certain types of things should do and actually do. Yeah.
Yes. And good. Glad you mentioned that, as usual. I will do my market prep just for people if they're looking for kind of a little process here around technical analysis on Sunday before I see John, right? And then I'll put in, and the other thing I started doing not that long ago, is because I was kind of curious, was adding the expected market move, weekly moves to my charts. And I have found them to be effective and impactful. Then once I lay that out on my charts the next day, then I will watch John and compare and contrast. Am I seeing the same things John is seeing? Am I seeing something that he's not? Whatever the case may be, it's kind of like it's additive, but you're also kind of grading yourself to a certain degree. Where is his eyes gravitating to? Where were my eyes gravitating to? Am I being too zoomed in? Am I not zooming out enough? So, you're not only using the market outlook to help you with your TA, but grade your TA, right? So you
Right.
should be doing your own TA, your chart work before that session. Because it's easy to just say, well, whatever John said, and just mark up my chart. That's that's better than nothing. But are you learning? Are you becoming? John could go on vacation for the next year. What are you going to do for your TA analysis? You got to be able to do your own fishing at some point, right?
Right. I mean, you'll gain a much better understanding much faster if you're doing it and you're
Yeah.
actually putting in the work for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So TA. So then the other, other than these three, you pick one and I'll talk about it. What were my biggest lessons learned? I guess I kind of talked about that, but I could expand on it. What new things do you plan? No, I don't know that one. What was your biggest lessons in 24? And what advice would you give aspiring or struggling traders? Your
I
pick.
think advice on what you're giving aspiring and struggling traders.
Okay.
Are you still there?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. My screen.
Yeah.
Goofy. Yeah. Advice on what you might give. Yep.
Yeah, for sure. This is always good because we've all been there, right? And sometimes we fall back into that. It's good to kind of have these affirmations, not only that you would give someone else, you give to yourself. But I have a specific list. Number one, and these are kind of in statement form: trade to trade well, not to make money. Develop and refine a consistent process to your trading. That phrase really speaks to a term that was coined years ago here: process over profits. Trade to trade well, not to make money. If you really start focusing on the money and the outcomes, like John and I talk about a lot, you're going to be gripped by that fear. And I'll make a comment because I think it's as interesting that I do see people in the community that have fantastic TA skills, but they're not putting on trades that maximize it.
Right.
There's some fear somewhere. Trade to trade well. You're not trading well if you're not maximizing the skills that you have, right? So I would suspect that there's some money-based fear that's holding you back there. And it could be you're not putting on appropriate size for your skill level. The other way, and most people have the problem of putting on too much size and they don't have the skills. I'm seeing people that have fantastic skills and they're putting on tiny size. So think about that. If you're trading well, you want to be able to take advantage of it. And stop focusing on the outcome. Stop focusing on, oh, I don't want to lose $2,000. Well, you're never going to make $2,000 if you're not willing to lose $2,000. So just focus on, how about forget the $2,000? And I'm not saying forget about risk. I'm saying put your focus on your process and those outcomes will take care of themselves. The other bit of advice is the only thing worse than being wrong in a bad trade is staying wrong, right? So we hit our max loss or our absolute max loss limits. Just get out, get that monkey off your back and start fresh. It is one of the biggest weights you'll ever lift off your chest. Next is act immediately upon your price points at your scheduled time of day, of course, whenever, if the end of day is when you do your adjustments and entries, but act immediately on those price points, your control points, your levels, your action levels without hesitation. Don't wait for confirmation. You're going to get a terrible risk reward ratio. So that hesitancy can start to cost you. And that takes practice and time and building a belief, but keep that in mind. Always stay fluid with the market. We were all bulled up yesterday, going into yesterday. Santa Claus, we're going to go higher. And rightfully so. But we're fluid.
Most of the time that happens, right? But not all the time.
The odds. We were consolidating in the SPX and the move should have been up, according to all the evidence that we had, and it was down. So we're fluid. Stay fluid. Don't get, in other words, don't get all bulled up and not be able to accept the risk if it goes the other way. So we want to stay fluid in the market and always, and then John does a great job of this, when we're adjusting our trades, you got to be fluid in that. Sometimes we tend to look at, well, here's the adjustment I'm going to make if we go up. Well, wait a minute. What if we go down? You got to consider that, right? Even though it's, we put a high probability the market's going to go up, you still need to stay fluid and say, well, what if it goes down? I need to be prepared for that. And then lastly, advice I would give, John, is never try to justify a losing trade. Just get rid of it. I think that speaks to kind of one of the other things I said before. There's nothing more
Are you
effective
trying to just say, like, don't get attached to losing trade?
Don't get attached to losing trade. Don't get attached to a trade. It could be a winning trade. Just there's no bigger relief than to get rid of something, particularly if it's not working, and stop fighting it. It could be a trade you just got whipsawed in, and you don't want to get caught up in fighting it and have to win everything. There is a great level of clarity in starting fresh, getting flat, going to cash. Start your process over. Okay, I'm going to look at charts clean, come up with a new plan. It's not, oh, this one didn't work, I'm going to stick on the same trade because I got to win, right? So, yeah, that's what I would say to people who are kind of struggling is for those things, and stay with it. And I think Dan made a great comment. It is you got to play the long game. Developing a skill, it's an elite level skill. Not many people have, so it's definitely worth the juice is worth the squeeze. But just be patient and show grace to yourself.
Absolutely. That's just fantastic advice, because there's so many people out there who are they get so stressed out and so overly focused on process that they just can't learn. And we want to make sure that we can learn.